Today we're going to be talking about Kiff Slemmons, an American artist who, despite working primarily in metal, was able to address multiple disciplines in her work through a bunch of education, research, travel, etc. Something important to note about her inspirations. Her mom was a pharmacist, and Slemon describes growing up around shelves and labels. Even more influential was her dad, because he was the editor and publisher of the town newspaper. She spent a lot of time doing odd jobs for the newspaper, and she said she had a deep appreciation for the machines and techniques, saying, "The presses, the smell of ink, the feel of the paper, the intricate plates of type with the words upside down and backwards. The linotype machine was of special interest, a real contraption where hot metal was turned into type." So we're seeing that her biggest inspirations are language and written words. Slemons also talks about her half tomboy nature when she was younger, saying she enjoyed sports, but also enjoyed wearing dresses. This experience points to her gravitation towards contrast and juxtaposition. Education. So in 62, Slemmons was enrolled in Scripps College in California, but she quickly changed paths and actually studied for a year at the Sorbonne in Paris. She then attended the University of Iowa, graduating summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa with a Bachelor of Arts in Art and French. At this point, she and her now husband were working two jobs, both going to school full-time. She decided she needed some money, so she decided to table at one of the student art markets. She made 150 pairs of earrings out of two spools of brass wire she picked up from the hardware store and the Venetian beaded curtain she found near the old farmhouse the two were renting. She made $300 and funded a trip to Mexico. In Mexico, she visited the ancient Zapotec metropolis, Monte Alban, where a museum was showcasing jewelry taken from Tomb 7. That's already something we gotta look into. I'm not gonna get into it right now. This is what inspired her to start using non-precious jewelry materials. She began experimenting with paper beads. She also studied engraving in Japan, where she learned more about it. She said she always struggled with it until she moved there, and they taught her how to push the chisel towards you rather than away from you with an engraving tool. Her time there also helped her overcome her struggle with flatness in her work, and she grew to see it as a stylistic option rather than a failure. Rather than decorative ornamentation, Slemon sees her work as something to imbue herself in. It reflects her literary interest, but also her own emotions. Some of her first pieces were commemorative shrines meant to honor close friends and family. They were small, but this only challenged how scale interacts with significance. She is also big on her materials meaning something. So though she works with materials that are familiar to her, such as paper, dominoes, and dice, she's also inspired by materials from all over the world. She cites the Mayans, considering jade to represent fertility, water, and the circle of life, as well as benin coral, which protects and fertilizes the land, and also whale ivory, which is reserved for royalty in Hawaii. Between 1987 and 1991, Slemmons produced some of her most iconic work, Hands of the Heroes. This is a series of 43 hand-shaped brooches. Each hand is inspired by a different historical figure made from silver, ebony, and mastodon ivory, and the heroes range from Harry Houdini to Marie Curie. When finding artists to synthesize with Slemmons, Linda Darty really appealed to me. So she taught this class called Cloisonne, the Brilliance of Transparent Enamel, and she really focused on shading with transparent and opalescent enamels on small scale copper and silver. This class focused on blending colors to achieve value gradations, luminosity, and depth, and also using foil beneath colors. Though this is a lot more representative than Slemmons' work, this small scale, they're both brooches, or they were both making collections of brooches, and the small repetitive circles in the pollen, the pistons, and the petals are a little bit reminiscent of the kind of patterns that Slemmons was using to fill her hands. Also, David Harper Clemens, his necklace right here, leaf abstraction, reminded me of Slemmons' work because they're both using negative space, right? They're both cutting out of their metal and leaving that hollow. And they're also abstractions of real objects, right? But one thing is that Harper does use, I would say, more imprints in his metal than Slemmons does. Slemmons is very light-handed with where she makes imprints in her metal. But for Clemens. It's on a larger space. Okay, so her more recent work, Slemmons' more recent work, is heavily interested in Oaxacan paper jewelry. This ties back to her trip to Monte Alban and her love for the printing press. She worked on many paper pieces during residency in an atelier called Arte Papel Oaxaca. Some of the pieces reference African jewelry with paper discs building to form beads and other sculptural forms. The material is significant in that several cultures have been using it for centuries, but also because of how it ties into her ideas of contrast. Paper is soft and doesn't seem to be able to create long-lasting structure, but the way it builds on itself gives that strength. She also uses knapping, a method where you chip the edge of stone to make jagged edges used in weaponry. This was largely used by the Australian Aboriginals, once again showing her use of other cultures in her work. These pieces use stone in contrast with metal and modern metal tools. Now, it's important to note the controversy Slemmons has around some of her work, as her appraisal highlights the way art as an institution rewards white artists for using the same methods to create art that people of color have used for centuries and treat it like something new. Now, moving on to Heikki Seppa, this is another artist that I found to relate to Slemmons. They both reference history in modern arts. So let's look at this other piece from Seppa, his coffee set made from sterling silver and ebony. Not only are they transforming historical forms, which they come in many forms, but these are transformed to be something modern. They are sleek. They are made from modern methods. I thought that was really cool. But impact, let's talk about Slemmons again. So Slemmons has released a few books, two that I referenced, being The Thought of Things, Jewelry by Kiff Slemmons, showcasing her work and their meanings, and Kiff Slemmons and Arte Papel Oaxaca, which goes over her residency in Oaxaca. She currently lives in Chicago, where she's continuing her work.